West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est long, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Let's speak now to our CNN political commentators Alice Stewart and Amanda Carpenter, both with long history of working in the Republican Party. You know, it's a moment to sigh, right? Because 4 months ago today, hundreds of people violently attacked the Capitol based on a lie. They attacked police officers. Many were injured. The president refused to call them back. There was a brief moment of bipartisan outrage at it. That's disappeared. And now Cheney is on an island. She's paying a price for it. You know, Amanda, we talked under Trump, Republicans and Democrats, about the threat to the American democratic system posed by Trump singularly. But is the fact today that it is not him singularly? It's a party unwilling to accept a lost election.
You know what, Jim? After I read that op-ed, I stopped wringing my hands. I stopped sighing over the situation because Liz Cheney is moving into position to do something really good for the country and democracy. The most important part of that op-ed had to do with her push for the January 6th commission to get to the bottom of what led to that day. And that is an important trade-off because if Kevin McCarthy and the Republican leadership want to continue with this big election lie, then that just bolsters the need for a January 6th commission to set the record straight. And she can do this. She can pull together Republicans to help Democrats pass this in the House and the Senate. And I think that'll do a lot more good than she could ever do working with Kevin McCarthy.
You make such an interesting and important point, Amanda, because what she called for, right, was no politicians of either party, current politicians, to be on that commission. And Amanda, you've made the point that she really wants actual honest answers, especially probing McCarthy and his conversations with Trump on that day and subsequent conversations, which reminded me of this exchange just recently with Chris Wallace. Let's roll it.
Has the president ever reached out to you since that report came out to discuss what you and he talked about in the January 6th phone call? And did you say to him, I can't because we're under oath?
No.
That never happened?
It's never happened.
And you would...
Never even close.
And if it did happen, you would agree that would be witness tampering?
Yeah, but never happened.
Questions like that, Amanda?
Yeah, I mean, this goes beyond Kevin McCarthy. I don't want to say this is just about him, although he's an important element of it. There are a lot of things that Republicans in leadership positions don't want to talk about. How the Stop the Steal efforts in Georgia culminated in the riot that occurred on January 6th. All the attorneys general that were doing robocalls and pushing these efforts. I mean, this is really wide sweeping. I mean, there's new arrests every day where people are suggesting that they're willing to talk more about this. You see Adam Kinzinger on Twitter this morning, pushing a letter from the Washington, D.C. police officer, Michael Fanone, who wants to talk about what he saw and what happened. And so you really have a lot of people who want to talk about this. And once this thing gets kicked out of Congress, once it passes, you are going to have so many Republicans with competence and experience who want to support this effort. I mean, this is rough. It's hard to watch what they're doing to Liz Cheney, but I think so much good is going to come out of it. And this is what real Republicans would do. They put their country first, they protect their institutions, and they restore the damage that has been done.
Amanda, I wish I shared. Amanda, I wish I shared your hope, Alice, because the question here, I wish, because the political incentives, and this is what I want to ask Alice about, are the opposite. It's pushing elected lawmakers in the opposite direction. I've had a sitting member of Congress, a Republican who I respect, a long history, military veteran, in fact, who told me after he voted to decertify the election results that if he didn't do it, he would lose his seat. 2/3 of Republicans voted to decertify the votes the night of January 6th. And since then, that feeling's gotten stronger, not weaker, Alice. And Republicans are confident, and Democrats, by the way, equally fearful that Republicans are going to win back the House in 2022. I wonder if the political incentives mean that this is baked for the party, right? Despite stands like Cheney's.
Exactly. Look, I agree with you, and I agree with Liz Cheney that the facts are the facts. The election was free and fair. Donald Trump lost. Joe Biden won. And there needs to be people held accountable for the insurrection at the Capitol, and many of them don't want to do so. I think all of those facts are true. The difference now is the focus has changed. The focus needs to be on firing Nancy Pelosi and winning the House in 2022. And unfortunately, with Liz Cheney putting so much emphasis, understandably, on her hatred and relitigating that hatred for Donald Trump and taking the focus off of what the goal is.
Alice, she didn't say hatred once in that piece. She said truth. She said he lost. And that's the thing that other Republicans won't say.
I'm telling you what members of Congress are telling me that are in the GOP conference. They are saying that it's not as much about her and what she continues to talk about President Trump. It is that the way she is in the conference, she is not building a consensus. She is more focused on the division within the Republican Party than the united front we need to have against the Biden administration. And it might seem laughable to some people, but her goal as conference chairwoman is to unite the conference. Her goal is to unite the conference, not to divide them. Well, I applaud her efforts to look to the bottom of what's happened on January 6th. Her role as conference chairwoman is to unite the party. And if her goal wants to be on the January 6th commission, more power to her. But the conference deserves someone that is going to be there to unite the conference and win back the House in 2022.
Amanda, even if it's uniting behind a lie?
Yeah, this is the dumb, stupid tribalism that got us into this mess. The dumb, stupid tribalism where people can say, I will support Donald Trump no matter what because red team, yay, blue team, bad. I mean, this is why we got to break this up. And Liz Cheney is not going to sacrifice an ounce of her conservative policy beliefs because she knows how to put country first. National security, democracy, our institutions are what unite us as a country, as Americans, not getting behind a big lie and covering up for an insurrection because we wear a red hat.
Alice Stewart, why can't the party, before getting to issues of tax rates and so on, state simply, as a fact, Joe Biden's the president? I watched John Barrasso on the air wiggle and writhe. He just wouldn't say the words. He would say he is in the White House now. He wouldn't say he won. Why can't Republicans acknowledge that fact? It sounds like, will you acknowledge that fact? Why can't sitting lawmakers acknowledge it?
I've said this from election night on. The election was free and fair, and when Donald Trump lost and Joe Biden won, he is the free and fair winner. I applauded him. I support him. He is our president of the United States. Why more Republicans don't acknowledge that, I don't know. But what is big and dumb and stupid, Amanda, is for Republicans to go back and continue to relitigate the past instead of uniting together on the policies and opposing.
2 or 4 years for as long as it takes. As long as it takes, so people can look at the camera and say Donald Trump incited an insurrection and doesn't deserve to lead the Republican Party. There's no unity coming under the red flag until then. Thank you.
The midterm elections need to be about policy and not about the past, and that's the only way that we're going to win is to focus on policy.
I think protecting our institutions is a policy. I think when it comes to telling lies for people to get into the voting booth, that is a policy. I think when people rant back voting rights based on big lies, that is a policy. And I don't agree with those policies. Maybe you do.
No, I agree with the big government policies of the Biden administration, and that's how the GOP United can go against that and take back the House.
There's no policy debates in Congress when people overrun it and climb the walls.
It is Friday, the 7th of May of 2021, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. Well, we've made it to the weekend, and in spite of all the turmoil that the Nazi Party has tried to throw our way, we still get to enjoy this weekend. It's Mother's Day, and hey, happy Mother's Day, Ma. And, on a personal note, my mom's birthday is the day after Mother's Day this year. Sometimes it falls on Mother's Day. So my mom gets to celebrate twice. Some people only celebrate holidays and birthdays as one big one, but we, even though we combine them, they're still celebrated separately. Yeah, well, that's what you got to do with Mom. Hey, how are you? Are you going to hang in there? I mean, these weekends are a lot more restful now than they were. Just keep reminding yourself that. Because we do have a Nazi Party intent on really making our lives miserable, and we just cannot let them do that. I insist that we should not let them. Not without, a little bit of a fight. And when I mean fight, I mean that we need to vote in such vast numbers that they can't cheat again. Just remember, every time you vote, you're punching a Nazi. Or 10. Maybe you're punching 10 Nazis. Let's do it that way. Maybe even 100. It depends on really how many of them there are out there and what the ratio is. But anyway, our votes are punching the Nazis. We cannot let them take over this government. Too much is at stake. And I'm not just, making it up. We do have history to remind us. So maybe if we start valorizing traitors to our cause, like erecting monuments in their honor, naming military bases after them, even, just whatever, bridges. Maybe we should stop doing that as a start. And maybe we could name the military bases and erect monuments to those who fought to keep the great experiment experimenting. God. Okay, well, so much for heritage. We do have a lot of treasonous members in our midst, and I call them good Republicans in the same vein as history called the good Germans. The good Germans! Just doing their job. The banality of evil. We have to live with them, don't we? I would say continue living your lives. Do not let them take our flag away. All right? They're trying to co-opt our flag and make it their own. We're not going to let them do it. How dare they? How dare they desecrate that flag? Not only with their weird markings on it, blue lines, black flags. The black flag is actually a flag of the South, the treasonous South, who waged war against the United States of America because they wanted to enslave people so they could make a buck. Oh, well, you don't want to enslave people to sell your product? Well, then you're just going to have to suffer the consequences. Our labor costs are going to be a lot lower than yours. How do you compete against that? Well, I suppose if you accept the magic of the market, there are some strings and attached to make the levers and trap doors work. Jeez, what do you think magic is? Yeah, it's not just a thought. It's action. Usually some kind of engineering to make it work. And so, if it's not working properly, you got to fix it. And that's what we're doing. And what we said was, got to pay a minimum wage. Okay? Oh, no, I can't pay a minimum wage. You're taking away our right to fulfill a contract to pay someone nothing. That's what they really want. Whenever they're against a minimum wage, it's because at heart, they're slavers. They think that they should be able to get somebody to work for them for free. And we already have that with some restaurant guy. I hate saying it was in the South, but it was in the South, I believe. Don't hate me now. But regardless, this guy had a developmentally disabled black guy work for 10 years or more for no pay at 100 hours a week. And when they caught him and they charged him for enslaving a human being and they threw his ass in jail, he cried. I didn't do anything wrong. Well, you know what? I guess if he gets into the right part of the prison, he may be feted as a hero. You enslaved a black guy? Wow, man. He's our kind of guy. So it beggars the next question. They talk about voter suppression. They enact laws to suppress the vote. But shouldn't people who vote for Nazis be, I don't know, re-educated? I used to have a joke, and still do, that you can't re-educate someone who hasn't been educated to begin with. I mean, first you have to educate them before you can re-educate them, just by definition. But these people learned something somewhere, Fox News. And there has been a generation or more of this brainwashing by this nefarious group, and I think it's called Fox News. What do? We just willy-nilly let everybody vote? I mean, shouldn't there be some sort of clause that says, well, only gentlemen and gentlewomen should be able to vote? And when we say gentle, maybe we should put the emphasis upon gentle. Not landed gentry, but those who have within their DNA empathy. Not sympathy, empathy. And we already know the Nazi Party of the United States has no capacity for empathy. They don't even have much for sympathy. They might be forced into sympathy. But they do not have empathy within their DNA. Yeah, I know, it sounds a little bigoted and prejudiced, but hey, it's Friday. We're sitting at the end of the bar, a very fancy bar, drinking our French 77s, because not every dive bar has the components to construct a French 77. So, with that in mind, since we are supposedly a cultured group, what do we have on the rest of the menu? Because there's a lot of news out there, and heck, why don't we just sum up the weekend with the news, which we do. Well, let's not valorize Liz Cheney either, okay? I don't think the Stefanik is going to be a great win, even though she's ostensibly less conservative, shall we say, than Lynn. But, yeah, Lynn is standing up for, I'll say, the great experiment, democracy. But she's still a danger to our democracy, and so was her dad. This is the other thing when they call it a dynasty. Wait a second, what are you talking about? I mean, the Kennedys were a dynasty. They have generations of it. The Cheneys? What's that, dad and his daughters? Come on. No dynasty. Anyway, this infighting, I love these GOP insiders and those who report on the GOP, that they just cannot recognize that party has embarked upon a steep slide into Nazism. But of course, they're going to call it dumb, stupid tribalism. Well, that's one way of putting it. But you know what? The Republican Party is being taken over by Nazis. And these GOP insiders are still part of the Wehrmacht Republic, and you know what happened to them. All right, well, don't say we didn't warn you. But this time, we're not going to allow it to happen. Not here. Not ever. This is America. Come on the rest of the menu. Well, an Oregon church that happens to be in the state capital of Salem that sued the state over COVID restrictions has suffered an outbreak with 74 severely sickened by the virus. Some people call that karma. But, we know karma is neither good nor bad. It's just karma. Anyway, sounds pretty bad. A GOP county party affiliate in Texas has officially backed a state house resolution to secede from the United States. But you know what? It's illegal to secede from the United States. We only had a civil war about that. And Florida is already being sued over its new voter suppression law. Yeah, tell DeSantis, what do you think you're doing? Who do you think you're up against? Hey, you better wake up, because you're up against America. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where the Speaker of the Parliament in the Maldives, former President Mohamed Nasheed, is being treated for shrapnel wounds after a bomb blast outside his family home. And he had been living in exile and had only come back to be Speaker of the Parliament. I think some people hold a grudge. And as public concerns mount over holding the games in a pandemic, an anti-Olympics campaign gains traction in Japan. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is that chat room link, and that chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly, for doing so, and so much more. If you would then take a look across the page near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will then hopefully notice the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, and if you could afford an espresso-type coffee drink, and if you could afford to send those funds to us once a month, we have the capabilities of stretching those dollars on the quantum level. Oh, we leave no strange quark unstretched, and we have a tremendous amount of experience in that particle accelerating collider. Yeah, what am I talking about? I'm talking about your help. We need your help. Even though we have been able to do this for 10 years, yeah, we're celebrating our 10th year anniversary this year of continuous 24/7, 365 resistance broadcasting as the founders originally intended. Yeah, they did. And we've been able to do it because of the generosity of folks like you and the generosity of folks who have been doing it for, 10 years. Thank you. And as I mentioned, if you could afford to send the equivalent of what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink, we stretch those dollars beyond compare. By paying our bills, we then are able to fly under the radar. It's weird how physics works. And then we continue resistance broadcasting as the founders originally intended. Thank you for your generosity. And that's all joking aside, it's true. We would be unable to do it without you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, it is so simple. You just go to @Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that and a whole lot more. Thank you, Tom. Follow me on Twitter @JusticePutnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Kos about 10 minutes before showtime. Scramble to get that linked up on Twitter and other social media platforms. And it looks like, unless they hit me with something else, I'll be back on Facebook on Monday. You know, they're really trying to shut us up. Something's up because they are coming out of the woodwork again. Something's happening. There's another influence campaign, so to speak. But it looks like maybe on Monday, I'll be able to post again on Facebook. But, hey, you can find those links to the show notes and links diary on Twitter and other social media platforms. Until I get onto Facebook, you're going to have to find them on others. Anyway, follow the show on Twitter @CookbookWest and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. Our snoozing sous chef is working very hard at his snoozing job, and I want to assure people he gets paid a living wage, okay? And he lives quite well. Our first offering here comes out of the Associated Press by anonymous staff. Oregon health officials say at least 74 people linked to a church in Salem have contracted COVID-19. The Oregon Health Authority started investigating the outbreak at the People's Church. The People's Church? That sounds ominous. I hope they're not trying to keep up with the Joneses. On April 6, the state did not release information about the outbreak until Wednesday of this week. The church's website and Facebook page indicates in-person services and events continue to be held there, including Mother's Day services scheduled for Sunday. Officials at People's Church declined to respond to questions from the Statesman Journal newspaper or acknowledge their specific outbreak. We are concerned about the COVID-19 surge in Oregon. This statewide increase has impacted our entire region, including our church family. Church spokesman Brett Kintz said in an email on behalf of church leadership. Now, last year, People's Church joined 9 other Oregon churches in a legal effort to overturn Governor Kate Brown's COVID-19 restrictions. The complaint, filed by California-based Pacific Justice Institute, no relation to this justice, argued that restrictions on churches violate constitutional protections for religious freedom, the religious freedom to infect your parishioners so they can infect others, because the others are just sinners anyway, huh? I want to take this religious freedom stuff and stuff it right back down their religious freedom. Back to the article at hand. According to the church's Facebook page, lead pastor Scott Erickson and his wife, Bonnie, both were hospitalized with COVID-19 last month. In a video message posted to the church's Facebook page on April 14th, Executive Pastor Tom Murray encouraged those who attend in person to physically distance and stay home if they are ill. Marion County has been the high-risk category for the past several months, with the exception of April 30th to May 6th when it was moved to just extreme risk. In both categories, people are required to wear masks and remain 6 feet apart. The church's recent Facebook photos of gatherings show neither masks nor physical distancing. And the People's Church is a non-denominational Assemblies of God church. Oliver Willis of the American Independent brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. The Denton Record Chronicle in Denton, Texas, reported that the Denton County Republican Party has officially passed a resolution proposing a referendum on whether the state should secede from the United States and establish itself as an independent republic, Texas. On April 15th, the party's executive committee voted in favor of a resolution backing House Bill 1359, introduced in the Texas House in January by Republican Representative Kyle Biederman. The bill, which calls for a referendum to be held during the general election on November 2nd of 2021, has not advanced past a referral to the state's committee on March 5th. The Denton County resolution falsely asserts that the U.S. Constitution is a contract between free and independent states, to which each state is bound only by its own voluntary act, and says that the U.S. government no longer represents the purposes for which the states form the Union. Really? Well, the late Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia wrote in a letter to a screenwriter in 2010 on the subject of secession, "I cannot imagine that such a question would ever reach the Supreme Court. The answer is clear. If there is any constitutional issue resolved by the Civil War, it is that there is no right to secede, hence the Pledge of Allegiance, one nation, indivisible." But the resolution calls passage of the House bill a priority for the Denton County Republican Party and resolves that the Denton County Republican Party is sending a strong message to our Texas legislators concerning the importance of HB 1359 and letting the people's voices be heard on the issue of Texas independence. Republicans in Texas, which seceded from the United States in 1861 and was readmitted to the Union after the Civil War, have been entertaining the idea for a new secession for months. In February, the Republican Party in Orange County, Texas, hosted an appearance by Daniel Miller, president of the Texas Nationalist Movement. You know, Nazis. A group that defines its mission as securing the independence of the nation of Texas. Miller describes himself as an outspoken advocate for Texas independence since 1996, when that hippie Bill Clinton came in. The group was referred to the movement for secession as Texit, a play on the term Brexit, used for the withdrawal of the UK from the EU. You know. Wow, that's something to aspire to. Anyway, the Austin Statesman Journal reported in January that Biederman appeared at a Texas Nationalist Movement town hall and said, "The Republic as we know it is dead. We all hoped that Trump would pull a rabbit out of his hat. We know the election was stolen." The secession movement also received a boost from right-wing radio and TV personality and conspiracy theorist Glenn Beck. Wow. He's still alive? Who said in an interview with Biederman, posted to the group's website, "If this were just a vote, I would vote for it." Oh, my. Now, the state party has urged a vote on Biederman's bill, and Alan West, you know, war criminal Alan West, the party chairman, has recently voted or voiced support for similar sentiments. After the U.S. Supreme Court rejected a Texas lawsuit to overturn President Joe Biden's win, West said, "Perhaps law-abiding states should bond together and form a union of states that will abide by the Constitution." Well, that right there is violating the Constitution, you war criminal. You cannot wage war against the United States. And rest assured, when the United States throws you in jail, they're not going to war with you. They're just following law and order. singer of the American Independent, brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Florida Republicans have already been hit with a lawsuit over the state's new voter suppression law minutes after GOP Governor Ron DeSantis signed the legislation that makes it harder to vote. The lawsuit, filed by voting rights and civil rights groups, accuses Republican state legislators of passing a law that purports to solve problems that do not exist. The lawsuit says legislation SB 90 caters to a dangerous lie about the 2020 election that threatens our most basic democratic values and, in the end, makes it harder to vote without adequate justification for doing so. The new law dramatically limits the use of drop boxes for absentee ballots, saying they can only be used during early voting hours, and forces them to be continuously monitored in person by an employee of the supervisor's office when the drop box is accessible for deposit of ballots. Election supervisors who violate this new law could be hit with $25,000 fines. In other words, DeSantis has criminalized voting. The new law also requires voters to request absentee ballots more frequently. Until DeSantis signed this legislation into law, voters could request an absentee ballot for 2 general election cycles. This bill requires voters who wish to vote by mail to request an absentee ballot every cycle. The lawsuit says the law was crafted to and will operate to make it more difficult for certain types of voters to participate in the state's elections, including those voters who generally wish to vote with a vote-by-mail ballot, and voters who have historically had to overcome substantial hurdles to reach the ballot box, such as Florida's senior voters, youngest voters, and minority voters. Florida is the latest Republican-controlled state to pass a voter suppression law in the wake of Donald Trump's loss in the 2020 election. Republicans have been working to pass voter suppression laws after Trump lied that the election was stolen from him thanks to fraud, and has pushed for restrictions on things like voting by mail and limiting early voting periods. Now, I repeat it. You can't hack paper ballots. Why would anyone want to get rid of a mail-in paper ballot that cannot be hacked? Why? Well, we know why. And with that, let's get to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world. And we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, fight! Full disclosure, I have never played Mortal Kombat. I knew that it was a top-tier arcade console fighting game while I sucked playing Soul Calibur. What I didn't know until now is that it's become a huge beloved franchise with multiple games, a gajillion characters, and a labyrinthine melodramatic plot. Good guys, bad guys, this guy dies and comes back as this other guy, these guys are related, these guys have beef, it's martial arts and magic and cyborgs, whatever. It's all addressing for the combat which needs to happen because regularly, different dimensions offer up their fight champions to determine who gets to rule. In this new Mortal Kombat movie, a franchise reboot coming out of Australia and backed by Warner Brothers, the champions of Evil Outworld have won 9 times in a row. One more time, and the Elder Gods let soul-sucking boss Shang Tsung move on Earthworld like a steamroller. What's clear here is that first-time feature director Simon McQuoid and first-time feature writer Greg Russo, not a Russo brother, are working with a limited budget and the best of intentions. McQuoid eschews CGI for a lot of cool real-life location shooting, giving the film an old-fashioned 80s feel. He also wanted the fights to have different narrative flavors, which they do, and wanted an R rating, which manifests in a lot of cursing that can feel more performative than organic, and in moments where you say, oh hey, that's a lot of blood. Russo's bold step is to introduce Cole Young, an entirely new character not from the games, as our protagonist. Cole is about protecting his family because formulas work and are thus bankable. Indeed, there's very little else that's new here. In fact, the plot is really the Bad News Bears. A plucky band of misfits must believe in each other and in themselves to acquire the mojo to beat the bad guy team, who are the reigning champions and are better funded, better skilled, and all-around jerks. Mortal Kombat ain't fabulous. It tries a little too hard to be masculinist and is even a little toxic, but it's a movie for the fans and for those waiting for the next Fast and Furious to come out. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Karen Hopkin. The melodious sounds of trills and tweets, whistles and warbles are a harbinger of spring. But do you ever wonder what birds are actually talking about? Maybe they're catching up after a winter away. Or maybe they're saying, "Step off, this twig is my territory." Or maybe they're signaling that there's a predator about, even when there isn't. Well, if a bird crying wolf sounds silly, a new study shows that in Australia, certain male songbirds use this trick to get females they wish to woo to stick around a little longer. The results appear in the journal Current Biology. The superb lyrebird, that's spelled L-Y-R-E, is famous for its ability to imitate the calls it hears in its local environment, from the fluid melody of a shrike thrush to the distinctive laugh of a kookaburra. The males weave these oral entertainments into songs they sing to attract mates.
What lyrebirds are most well known for in Australia, what we call their recital song, their amazing lyrical loud song that they sing from the tops of the trees before dawn, throughout the day and even into dusk during the breeding season. And this recital song, also most of it is mimicry, and the male just reels through imitations of lots of species of forest birds, and they just cycle through them. Each new imitation is different from the rest.
Anastasia DL, a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Wollongong. She and her colleagues were planning on studying this impressive acoustical exhibition.
But we soon realised that every now and then, the male lyrebird was producing a completely different kind of mimicry.
This alternate routine is trotted out at the very end of the male's elaborate song and dance display. It's sort of buzzy and even somewhat annoying, and it perfectly reproduces the alarm calls made by a mobbing flock of birds that has spotted a predator.
They're visually conspicuous, they're acoustically conspicuous, and they're a reliable cue of the presence of a predator in the environment.
Even for humans.
I use them, mobbing flocks, to try and avoid stepping on snakes while I'm doing my fieldwork in Australia.
And a single male lyrebird can reproduce the whole shebang.
It's really impressive. The males even manage to imitate the sounds of small birds, the wing beats of small birds as they fly over or at the predator. It's very, very convincing.
And what do they hope to achieve with this performance? The clue, DL says, came from determining when they choose to do it.
So we found that males didn't produce this mobbing flock mimicry when a real predator was around. Not at all. The only context in which they produced it, the mobbing flock mimicry, was during courtship and particularly at key moments.
The first is when the male has sung his little heart out, entertaining a female with his elaborate and lyrical ballad, but his potential paramour turns up her nose.
And it's the moment she steps off his display platform is when the male switches to his mobbing flock mimicry.
A sound that suggests there's a predator nearby, when really, there isn't.
So we think this might be a way of the male saying, "Baby, it's dangerous outside, stay here safe with me," and then giving him more opportunity to display his beautiful song and dance prowess.
Well, the only other time DL and her colleagues witnessed males pulling this stunt was when they were in the midst of mating.
So the whole thing was absolutely bizarre.
Strange, it's true, but the researchers speculate that amorous males might give their partners the impression that they're surrounded by peril.
In order to prevent the females from prematurely ending the sexual interaction. Prematurely, that is, from the point of view of the male.
Because if the male doesn't deliver what he promised, the female might decide to take an early flight. For Scientific Americans, 60-Second Science, I'm Karen Hopkin.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Just when you thought that legislators in battleground states who have been working furiously to make voting far more difficult couldn't figure out any more voter suppression laws, they have. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. The United States, particularly in the South, has a long history of partisan poll watchers descending on voters in communities of color on Election Day to intimidate voters into not voting, and if they do vote, to make sure that their votes are not counted. These Jim Crow-era poll watcher voter intimidation tactics are now being enshrined in law books across the South, once again. These laws will make it nearly impossible to remove from a polling place an extremely partisan poll watcher or poll watchers who are engaging in intimidating tactics against voters. And in a 21st century update, poll watchers will now be able to video record voters receiving assistance and post those videos on social media, which of course can dissuade a would-be voter from casting a ballot. There's more. These partisan poll watchers also will be authorized to overcrowd polling places, and they will have the legal right to get right up in the face of an election worker. During the campaign, Trump called for, quote, an army of poll workers. Merriam-Webster's first definition of army is a large organized body of armed personnel trained for war, especially on land. An army of poll watchers beginning in 2022? Seriously? Seriously. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1937. That was the day animators struck Fleischer Studios in New York City. It was the industry's first strike. Creators of Popeye the Sailor Man and Betty Boop were fed up with working conditions at Fleischer. They were sick of the long hours, low pay, no paid sick leave, or even vacation time. Some had worked years without a day off. As well, they resented having to ask permission to use the bathroom. Animation workers wanted better working conditions and medical insurance. 2 animators had recently died of tuberculosis, and workers linked their deaths to poor ventilation in the studio. They had been trying to organize with the Commercial Artists and Designers Union for over a year. 2 leading animators were fired for union activity a month earlier, and another 13 were fired when the union approached the studio demanding their reinstatement, union recognition, wage increases, and benefits. In his book, Drawing the Line, Tom Cito writes that picketers were soon marching on Broadway singing, "We're Popeye the Union Man. We'll fight to the finish because we can't live on spinach." One picket sign read, "I make millions laugh, but the real joke is my salary." Strikers received support from the Screen Actors Guild. The Musicians Union refused to provide soundtracks for the studio, and many union projectionists refused to show Fleischer cartoons across the country. The AFL organized a boycott of Paramount Pictures, which financed the studio, and area longshoremen frequently joined the picket lines. After 5 months, the studio finally caved, granting the strikers' demands. But the victory was short-lived. Fleischer made moves to relocate to Florida within a year, in part to bust their union. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently only 48 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high of only 64 degrees, which is considerably lower than what we had yesterday, where it had topped out about 70. So, it looks like we're at the... Well, there's a cold front pushing through. Considerable precipitation out on the coast. Could possibly have smattering, or would it be a splattering, of rain in isolated spots that would be east of the coastal range and west of the Cascades. But maybe we won't be getting any around here. We'll see, but the winds will be out of the north-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour throughout the weekend. A mix of clouds and sun today, clear skies overnight, and, of course, we are under an active freeze watch. How dare they? It's a good thing I didn't put those tomatoes in the ground yet, because I'd have to take even more extra precautions. As it is, all the hanging baskets will be going into the greenhouse, and I'll have to cover up the strawberries and some other specimens out there that might be susceptible to freezing in May. How dare they? How dare they? But, so we have that going for us, though. It looks like tomorrow we're going to have partly cloudy skies with highs above 70, winds out of the north-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon have increased to 10,649, and our deceased has increased by 1 to 132. Grass pollen is rated as very high outside the window here in Rogue River proper. The air quality index for the region is good at 35 parts per million, and the daytime UV index remains very high in spite of the passing clouds at 8. So slather on the SP50. Yeah, SPV 50. Get it on. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.3 inches, visibility is at 9 miles, and relative humidity is at 88%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world, and we call that, affectionately, the Weather Underground. London is 56 degrees and fair. Paris is 60 and sunny. Rome is 70 degrees and partly cloudy. Kyiv is 64 and fair. Kabul is 68 and mostly cloudy. Hong Kong is 75 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 61 degrees and just merely cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 63 and fair. San Francisco, California is 50 degrees and sunny with a small craft advisory onshore, or on the bay and offshore, because of course heavy winds, so do take care. And New York is 62 degrees Fahrenheit and fair. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Anonymous staff at Reuters bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. The Speaker of Parliament in the Maldives, former President Mohamed Nasheed, was being treated for shrapnel wounds and in stable condition after a blast outside his family home yesterday, Thursday, a spokesman for his governing Maldivian Democratic Party said. two close family members who asked not to be identified due to the sensitivity of the situation told Reuters that Nasheed was talking and responsive before being treated under anesthesia at the hospital. There was no immediate claim of responsibility for the attack. President Ibrahim Mohamed Nasheed, a close ally of Nasheed, said an investigation into the explosion was underway. Images from state TV channel PSM showed security services securing the scene of the incident in the capital mall. A foreign tourist was also injured, the channel reported. Nasheed, who became Maldives' first democratically elected president in 2008, has remained an influential figure since leaving office in 2012. He is president of the governing party and, after returning from a period in exile, has served as parliament speaker since 2019. The archipelago has been known in the past for political unrest as well as Islamist militant violence. In 2015, former President Abdullah Yameen escaped unharmed after an explosion on his speedboat, while a 2007 blast blamed on Islamist militants targeted foreign tourists and injured 12 people.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mais automne, quand les feuilles tombent partout, si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Akiko Okamoto and Jumin Park of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. More than 230,000 people have signed a Japanese petition calling for the Tokyo Olympics to be canceled in just 2 days since it was launched online as public concerns mount over holding the showpiece event during a pandemic. With 11 weeks to go before the start of the games, already postponed from 2020 due to the coronavirus, questions remain over how Tokyo can host a global gathering while keeping volunteers, athletes, officials, and the Japanese public safe from COVID-19. Organized by a lawyer who has run several times for Tokyo governor, the Stop Tokyo Olympics petition has gathered more than 230,000 signatures. Game organizers and the Japanese government have repeatedly said the event needs to go ahead, in part as a symbol of the world's triumph over the pandemic, and detailed COVID-19 protocols have been unveiled for participants. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on. In fact, we'll meet up here on Monday for River City Hash Mondays, so do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here on Monday, right here, on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Sous la pluie d'un novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin l'âge tendre. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.